you seen Predator Badlands yet? What'd you think? Now, I imagine you probably either loved it or hated it for the same reason. It's a fun movie, but a little jarring if you wanted the pulpy sci-fi horror of the original films, and instead got a PG-13 Guardians of the Galaxy movie about found family.
What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
I get it. That's why I'm bringing to you today the one Predator game that hardly anyone talks about, and yet it's exactly what fans and haters of Badlands will want to play after they get finished watching the movie, either to rekindle their love for the franchise, or the chance to play yet another Predator-centric story where you can actually use all of his gadgets, unlike the movie. That game is Predator Concrete Jungle, developed by Eurocom and released on the PS2 and Xbox back in 2005. But wait, you might be thinking, why would I want to play something that's got a 46 on Metacritic? Well, here's the thing. Yes, Concrete Jungle has some flaws and some annoying ones at that. But what's so great about it is that if you're really a fan of the Predator, it'll be easy to find reasons to like this one, maybe even love it. To date, it's still technically the only Predator game that actually stars the Predator, and that's gotta count for something. Now, Concrete Jungle doesn't play perfectly, but even its frustrating jank is a necessary evil, so you can experience one of the most inventive... Oh my god. So you can experience one of the most inventive Predator stories ever told, which thankfully never takes itself too seriously. There's such a breadth of Predator things to do, and some welcome surprises that'll really take you off guard in the best way. So let's get stuck in like a sexual Tyrannosaurus,
Just like me.
and see what the fuss is all about. This Predator tale is written by none other than comics legend Grant Morrison, who is a personal favorite of mine, having penned some of the best JLA stories ever told back in the early 2000s. He brings that sense of fun and digestible literacy to this story. This isn't just a video game plot strung together to justify set pieces either. In fact, the game started out as a big urban open world where the NPCs had set schedules and the Predator could ascertain their whereabouts using a database and decide by their characteristics whether they were worthy prey or not. When the game's scope had to be considerably pared down due to how impossible it would be to make with the budget and team size that Eurocom had, Morrison reportedly came in and cleaned up all the connective tissue between all the levels with writerly aplomb, essentially saving the project's tone and feel and making the pieces finally feel cohesive. And if nothing else, you should play this game for all the fan service and Easter eggs that he put in there. This game is all about Scarface, a predator who got bested and, in an attempt to cover up his tracks, decided to do the classic blow my ship up routine, only this time he levels all of New Way City, still survives, and alerts the whole world to his presence all the more, earning himself some major time out for 100 years on a dangerous planet where he has to fend for himself. That is, until the big bad Predator Tribunal comes back with an intriguing offer. Earth has since rebuilt the old gangster-ridden New Way City of 1930 into the futuristic Neonopolis of 2030, and they've also managed to procure Yautja tech and use it against them, which of course the Yautja cannot have. Scarface is told to clean up the mess, retrieve the tech, and put down the human factions wielding it. Do that, and he's back in the club. The story feels original without feeling like it's going too many places at once. Concrete Jungle recalls the street-level gang war feeling of Predator 2 with ridiculous factions like the luchador outfitted Matadores, the voodoo gang, the Les Serviteurs,
Les Serviteurs!
or the Cornstar gang that's not quite what they seem. It's like getting to play as futuristic Batman, keeping the streets clean of mobsters with our gadgets and weapons. You know, if Batman snapped every now and again and then just snapped someone's head clean off. We even get to fight gangsters and such in some flashback levels of the 30s, so consider me harder than those Diamond Blades deckwares in the Badlands movie. Now the real fun is in the spoilers, but let's keep everyone together for now and we'll break out into spoilers later in case anyone wants to just know if the game is fun so they can play it and save those surprises for themselves.
I couldn't have put it better myself.
So let's get to the meat and taters, the presentation, and the gameplay. Like most licensed products, Concrete Jungle looks and sounds the part with licensed sound and cinematic music. For my modern eyes, it's not the prettiest game you'll ever see from that era, but neither is it an ugly game, and certain areas pop a lot more than others. It's certainly a game that can feel like it just oozes that sort of weird sci-fi, but not aspirational sci-fi, more of the grungy, industrial, original Star Wars look. The soundtrack feels like it could be in any 80s classic sci-fi movie and feel right at horn. Right at horn? Okay, that's a pretty funny typo. Right at home. The bombastic drums or pensive strings and horns feeling very Jerry Goldsmith or James Horner. Nice. The soundtrack morphs to match the flavor of whatever gang you're around, like the Matadores, the Borgia, or the Les Serviteurs.
Les Serviteurs!
Scarface's clicks, roars, and even the classic pop of his vision changes are here. So many missions start out with you cloaked and crouched overlooking a cityscape, and it all just feels right. Eurocom goes way beyond the surface level feel of the movies though. They really committed to letting you do all the Predator things. You get nearly all of the gadgets that the Predators have ever used in the movies, games, or comics, and Eurocoms even said they had to pare back some of the weapons options they wanted to use or risk tipping the scales towards overambitious scope creep yet again. You'll get to play with melee weapons like the wristblades, the combi stick, and the glave, and while the combi stick feels obligatory as it's so easily outmoded by the glave, the wristblades actually end up having some use late game because they're so much faster than the glaive, despite doing significantly less damage. It is hard to pass up using the power attack to skewer people and slam them down and again though, admittedly. You'll also have a variety of firebombs and various stun mines and explosives to toss at your enemies. The most important complement to your melee weapons though are the projectile weapons like the spears, the plasmacaster, and the smart disc, the last two of which drain your energy meter, which also powers your cloak. The fact that the two most devastating weapons and the most important stealth option are tied to your energy meter is no accident, as it balances them. Though admittedly the cloak is kinda cooler looking than it actually plays since it's fairly easy to see through and enemies tend to just unload on you anyway. You can push the joystick ever so slightly forward to make yourself walk more slowly and keep your cloak on for longer, and then you can sneak up on folks for one-hit stealth kills, which is worth more than the price of admission. Combined with the ability to rip the spines out of weakened enemies or execute any enemy you can directly get behind even in the middle of open combat, is an absolute thrill. One time I was fighting one of the Ulysses mechs and accidentally ripped the pilot's head clean out of the thing without even realizing how, and I gotta say, it is one of the most satisfying acts of carnage I've ever had the deep pleasure to perform in a video game. But the Predator wouldn't be much more than a brawler if he couldn't leap great heights or scale fire escapes or gratings to evade his enemies or to track them from afar. Despite not being open world, the levels were kept big enough to be full of non-essential but rewarding little nooks and crannies where you can find extra ammo or healing items or even places to recharge your suit's energy meter for your powerful abilities. Not to mention unlocking new side missions like killing X amount of a certain NPC type or destroying so many vehicles to unlock new costumes. This depth to the world gives you a sense of realism, but also the thrill of discovery, as it rewards the careful and attentive player who seeks out all the developers put together, and not just what's on the beaten obvious path. And before we get into why this game has a low-ass score after all these years, let's talk about Eurocom's awesome design pieces that play so well with the tropes of the Predator franchise. A trick that the game likes to employ is it'll have you follow an NPC to a locked door and zoom in on them and record them saying the password to get in, and then being able to replay that password later with your recording device, which is a great nod to how the Predators often record random pieces of chatter from their victims in the movies. There are also some really great missions where the game strips you of your abilities and asks you to rely on other aspects of your kit. One mission has you getting captured and having to find your gear and break yourself and fellow imprisoned Predators out with naught but your wristblades and stealth kills. My favorite mission is the one that tasks you with moving around a smartly designed and multi-level industrial setting with no ability to cloak because it's being jammed, and so you've got to avoid cameras and neutralize patrols without alerting too many people or it's game over. It's tense, and it's a fun challenge to disempower the player for a time and let them still feel like a hunter in the most primal way possible. Another all-too-fleeting moment of creativity has you walking through rain-soaked streets in the year 1930, which keeps you from being able to cloak, and so you have to grind through crowds of gangsters the hard way or see if you can jump across the puddles to keep your cloak intact. I'm actually surprised how few times this type of set-piece design actually comes up, something that would only come up in a Predator game, but I'm glad it at least exists as much as it does. But now, as fun as all this sounds, one of the main reasons that this game has never quite had the greatest reputation is its difficulty and its sometimes mind-bending controls. As many cool weapons as you get, often Concrete Jungle just feels like a brawler with you mindlessly mashing the attack button. Even when you use some of the more advanced power attacks like skewering gangsters with your glaive to knock them down for follow-up execution, it's still quite repetitive. You'll also have to fight the bonkers camera quite a bit to keep up with enemies in the first place. The camera is a normal enough feeling third-person camera of its age, but it is zoomed out a fair bit to account for the size of the levels and how often enemies are up on rooftops shooting heat-seeking missiles and stuff at you. To account for this, you can hold a button to auto-target the nearest enemies, though this doesn't always do a good job of picking up the guy that you'd want to attack, and requires you often to disengage it and re-engage it over and again to make sure it locks onto the right person. Sure, it's nice that you can perform evasive attacks using this lock-on, but the game's AI seems so overtuned with how easily they can hit you or even snipe you with a missile around corners and from 3 stories up in the air that you often have to just jump around like Frogger off his Ritalin or risk disaster. Don't even get me started on how crazy the camera gets when you're trying to jump or perform actions like healing yourself or performing execution. When you click and hold to jump to get the most height, the camera zooms way in on you so that you lose your sense of peripheral vision and the ability to know if you're just blasting up into the bottom of a platform that you wanted to land on in the first place. This happens like a lot. And it's not like Scarface is very consistent about grabbing onto things and mantling up them to mitigate how pixel perfect the game wants your jumps to be. With how disconcerting this zoom in is and how many times in the late game you're having to dodge heat-seeking missiles that keep knocking you down from your jumps, Concrete Jungle can be really frustrating in a totally unforced way. There are also unnecessarily disconcerting perspective changes where the camera switches to face your character when you engage the healing animation or when you're executing someone, so you don't have to readjust the camera behind Scarface after getting a kill or healing yourself, so it oftentimes will sort of invalidate the advantage that you got by making you have to sit there for a second and readjust the camera before you can move in the right direction. I think Eurocom thought this would be more cinematic, but it's actually just a real big pain in the ass to deal with over and over again. I'd also like to point out that while the game's not terrible at this, it's not the smoothest thing to switch between all the Predator's options. He has 4 vision modes. One, the classic heat vision from the movies, the other a tech vision that sees things like recharge stations or machines that can be destroyed or interacted with, then another that can read the statuses of enemies from docile green status to yellow suspicious or yellow meaning an important NPC type to an all-out red and ready to tango status. And it also makes the item pickups in high places much easier to see. Honestly, there only needed to be 2 vision modes max, one to see people and one to see things. There are just too many redundancies and there's already enough stuff to swap between, especially considering the fact that it's really easy for your cloak to be seen through, and rarely are you stealth assassinating people in droves, so having all these options to analyze the enemy or distract them or whatever don't really matter if you're just going to have to smash them all to a pulp anyway. So overall, the camera and the repetitive brawler nature of combat can be really frustrating and make the game drag on. The toughest enemies often have the smallest windows of being able to be damaged, so just jumping around mindlessly like you're spamming dodge roll in Dark Souls becomes the order of the day. The combat's so button mashy, you'll often have to hold back ever doing too much damage at once, so you don't get stuck in an animation chain that leaves you wide open to getting half your health knocked out by a boss or outright killed. And then you have to restart the entire level over again because there are 0 save points inside of levels. I wouldn't wish playing the Xbox and PS2 versions without any way to quick save on my worst enemy. It's just so tedious and unfair to have to contend with the controls and the cheap inability to dodge the most devastating attacks when you're already having to grind through the repetition of combat and just have no way to soften the landing of a run going bad in an instant and ruining the last 20 minutes of you playing. And since we're talking about some of the frustrating and disappointing aspects of Predator Concrete Jungle, let me turn the floor over to a longtime friend of the channel and obvious Predator superfan, Predator 1981, who had a similar disillusionment with the game when it first came out.
I remember getting this game on my original Xbox in 2005. I was very excited to play it as a huge fan of the movies, but to be very honest, it wasn't great back then, and of course it isn't nowadays. Technically, the game never looked good or felt something special while playing it. In 2005, there were a lot of other great games that clearly outdo the Predator game in graphics, controls and overall design. I think creating a stealth-like game, like the 1 month earlier released Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, would have been the better choice instead of a brainless brawler. I really like the metropolis and gang setting of the movie, and the template is awesome for a game. This game really needs a proper remake with a bigger scale. The world was too narrow and freed from any details for my taste. Of course, the limitation was also connected to the capabilities of the old gaming machines. Imagining a semi or even open world to approach the targets, especially in stealth mode, this could be a great game. So besides the gore, which was cool at the time, the game was nothing special to me and also had a bad stand at the official critics. It's described as a good idea badly implemented, and I need to agree on that. Consider that I was older playing this game and had different expectations due to former gaming experience. But I can imagine how this game would have also impressed me if I had been younger to experience it. So is it a bad or a good game? I think it's a solid game for fans, which can deliver a lot of fun, but overall nothing special for everyone else. And of course, you should bring a good frustration tolerance with you to experience and master the clunky controls.
I obviously couldn't do a Predator video on this channel without including him, so thanks for that insight from Ground Zero of 2005. And make sure you go check out his channel. He does a lot of bite-sized reviews on just a very eclectic blend of older games, so if you like me, you'll probably have a good time watching his stuff as well. But Predator 1981 does make a good point that I want to segue back into our discussion, that frustration is kind of the breaking point for a lot of people playing this game, not just repetition. Ironically, many reviewers said this game is too easy, but I think they're really just talking about parts of the combat being too simple and repetitive, because easy? I can imagine the sometimes punishingly cheap difficulty kept a lot of people out of the endgame, especially considering how hard the last couple levels are. And that's too bad, because you're going to want to see this story through to the end. This is one of the best Predator stories ever told, and totally worth the price of admission. So I promised you spoilers earlier, and you're going to want to hear these, so let's get into it. The setup of Concrete Jungle is perfection. The Predator having to redeem himself and go up against humans with Predator tech is such a fun idea in and of itself, and then Grant Morrison decided to dial up the Predator 2 schlock machine and pump out some of the most ridiculous factions to punch through to achieve this goal. The game is funny, ridiculous, and gruesome, and really dials into what makes the Predator fun. Now, one choice I really like is the choice of narrator, whose identity I'll withhold for now, but we'll get to soon enough.
So the hunter returned to the hunt. This was a different jungle from that which it had left behind.
The Predator being this force of nature, he doesn't really have time to opine about his predicament, nor would it be that interesting to see things from his perspective. So the narrator talking about him in this admiring observer perspective grants him way more of a mythical feeling than, say, Badlands does for Deck. It makes the player feel way more special by inhabiting such a terrifying warrior who gets this kind of reaction wherever he goes. But anyway, let's get to the story itself. Scarface begins his journey of redemption in the place of his greatest shame as he tracks a gangster using cloaking tech all the way to the Le Serviteur.
Les serviteurs!
Clearly a reference to the Voodoo Gang from Predator 2.
See? Didn't I tell you this was a sign?
We have a gay old time making a shrunken head out of the Hungan, how do you say that? And hoisting him as a trophy. Then we run through the Dead Men Gang, who get this deliciously over-the-top description.
They believe in nothing. They live to get high and to die.
It really feels like we're the Punisher in a Garth Ennis comic book from the early 2000s, dealing with comically absurd and despicable criminals who have no chance against us, and have no choice but to root for the giant mass murderer because these guys are so awful. The Dead Men have made the grievous mistake of taking Predator tech too, so Scarface has no choice but to make them live up or die up to their name, and make this concrete jungle their final resting place.
He said it! He said it!
The final showdown in the church with the Triad, the Dead Men's enforcers, isn't a particularly exhilarating fight technically speaking, but I love all the climbing and leaping around that you do to evade and confuse the AI, and I enjoyed making them wish they never pursued a life of crime, especially in God's house. Scarface soon realizes that while he's on a mission to redeem himself, he's getting in the middle of a gang war where people are using Predator tech to get the upper hand, so he's got to clean out both sides while not getting killed in the crossfire. And this means we soon meet some of our biggest rivals in Neonopolis, the various parts of the Mafia, specifically the Giovannis, who have our glave, the best melee weapon in the game. Scarface has to sneak past their souped up defense systems, hordes of enforcers, and mechs to get it, but y'all already know how Scarface do.
We know how it ends.
But despite our record of public service cleaning up the streets, this has El Hongo and the Matadores gang licking their luchador lips and moving in to occupy the power vacuum. Forces of nature abhor a vacuum, so Scarface makes his presence felt.
This is bad. Very bad.
Once El Hongo realizes he's up next, he entreats one of the game's most important characters in Lucretia Borgia for help, the granddaughter of the mob boss that has a very specific history with Scarface back in 1930, even giving him his name, as we'll soon find out.
You holding out on me?
It's kind of funny how B-movie great this game gets as Lucretia brings in the Russians' elite squad of machine men. Unlike real life, their invasion is thankfully over quickly, in a matter of minutes, and they're never heard from again. Then we move on to better things in the Cornstar gang that's doing business with El Hongo, who never quite seems to understand the gravity of the situation until we wreck the whole complex he's in, drawing out the Cornstars as being actually this elite gang of cloaking badasses, but who are still no match for some explosives as we blow their gear sky high, totally borking their operation.
Damn, it feels good to be a gangster.
This is when those Punisher vibes really kick in. It's so fun to mess up the lives of bad people, you know what I mean? This draws the attention of Lucretia's father, Hunter Borgia, the mafia don of the modern age, and soon we take the fight to him, blowing up his power plants and running into his Ronin bodyguards, who for some reason are guarding an Italian mob family. This is just another example of how unhinged and goofy and fun Morrison makes this game feel. It's exactly the type of comic book fun that games could stand to be a lot more of these days. Now, if I haven't already lost you with another rote rendition of the game's events so far, don't worry. I kind of felt like it was a little dry too, and that's because it takes a little while for this game's story to get good and not just be funny or a couple fun playgrounds to do Predator things in. Despite his incredible success messing up the Borgias, the chameleon cornstars eventually overwhelm Scarface with sheer numbers, and he's captured by Hunter Borgia, who seems to know something about Scarface that Lucretia and the audience don't know yet. Lucretia just wants to sell all the tech that they have, including the mother computer, but Hunter knows they have to keep it and use it in order to maintain control of the city.
You have no idea what you're talking about. Mother is so much more than you know.
Then we get a very prescient flashback to the 1930s that has even further implications for Predator lore. Here, Scarface, as yet unscarred, is hunting Bruno Borgia, Hunter's father, and the mob boss before Scarface leveled the city. Turns out it's a big night for the Borgias as his wife Isabella is in labor and about to give birth to her son right there, and he takes the slaying of the New Way Devil, as Scarface is known, as a way to show his wife and son how much they mean to him. Okay man, I guess we all have our own love languages. And once we switch back to Scarface, we get to one of the best levels in the whole game that lets us sneak through a natural history museum all cloaked up. Take out these punks as the remnants of ancient civilizations look on in silence. Adding to this primal ancient feeling is Bruno's boss fight against him and his henchmen, with him wielding a shield and axe like he's dialing into the power of his ancestors or something. The fight's kind of a cluster as Bruno has the tiniest window to be damaged, but I appreciate the attempt for pageantry here. Soon, poor Bruno becomes ancient history himself, and Scarface approaches his new widow, Isabella, with Bruno's head in tow. Before we can see what happens, the scene switches back to the modern day, where Scarface lies in tortured captivity from Bruno's grandson Hunter. How very apropos. Scarface breaks free from his restraints in a very Metal Gear Solid kind of way, and we find out that he's not the only predator being experimented on here. Strangely though, the other predators that I freed either disappeared or died immediately, so I didn't really get to enjoy their presence. But again, I like the idea of feeling like the world is bigger than just me and my crusade. We'll see more of these brainwashed, experimented on predators soon, so enjoy them while they're on our side, I guess. Now I love this level because Scarface has to really play stealthily and sneak kill everyone or he'll have some trouble getting his gear back, even using his ability to mimic voices to draw enemies out and get them alone for quick kills. Once we get all of our stuff back, it's time to get our revenge on the bastard Borgias. We then discover that the narrator is the mother AI computer and she advises Lucretia Borgia to let out all the other experimented and brainwashed predators as a last-ditch measure. This seems like a cool idea, but the first one we fight is an absolute doofus, taking huge damage from our smart disk so that we just spam the thing and drop him fast like a bad date. With this predator down, Lucretia really starts to panic, marshaling all of her family's dwindling resources and trying to betray her family if need be to save herself from Scarface's wrath. Scarface soon belaters all the mechs and special forces and even another predator, this time a much less fun fight as you can barely make a single mistake without being cut down. But this poor soul down, Scarface is this close to advancing upon the Mother AI and completing his mission. Speaking of Mother, we get an amazing reveal as Lucretia agitatedly hopes her defenses have held out, and she actually runs into the body of Mother, who isn't actually an AI yet as you might expect, but a living, breathing woman kept alive for 100 years.
This is fucking impossible. You can't still be alive after 100 years.
Mother is actually Lucretia's grandmother Isabella Borgia, who apparently survived her son's birthday back in 1930 and now prolongs her life indefinitely using alien technology, running the city from behind the scenes. She even orchestrated the perfect environment to draw Scarface back in, manipulating the city's weather to be hotter so that the Ayuja would be attracted to it. Much like Mother attempted to allow the Xenomorphs to run rampant in hopes of learning to control them in the Alien franchise, so too does this Mother hope to attract and then clone the Ayuja so that they can rule the world or whatever with a giant army. As Scarface looks on, he recognizes Mother's voice as that belonged to Isabella, and how she used a rare moment of mercy on his part to shoot him in the face, giving him his namesake scar. Unbeknownst to Scarface, his spilled blood actually saved the life of the young Hunter Borgia, the very man who captured him and put him in this predicament in the first place. Scarface killed Bruno Borgia, Hunter's grandfather, and prompted his own disfigurement at Isabella's hand, which accidentally saved the life of the very hunter who now attempts to take revenge on Scarface, whose blood and the blood of his captured brethren now prolongs Mother. This isn't just a deliciously complex web of cause and effect, but it fundamentally revolutionizes the lore of the Alien and Predator franchises by intertwining them just as profoundly. And if the connection wasn't explicit enough, as Mother says,
Say hello to my little friends. Have fun together.
Surprise, motherfucker.
that's right, fucking xenomorphs are already here at Mother's command, and it's a race against endless hordes of them to shut down Mother and end her mad campaign to harvest the Predators for world domination. This reveal isn't just fun, it's an awesome piece of lore that I've never heard or seen replicated anywhere else. I deeply wish the movies would make use of this plotline and stop futzing around with all this other stuff. Now, this level isn't very fun until you realize, kind of randomly, that all the confusing backtracking to tear up the nest is easier once you know you can just throw mines while climbing to stun them and get to your destination unbothered. Still, their appearance is awesome, and really makes the world of AVP feel so much bigger and interconnected. Scarface finally rectifies his moment of mercy all those years ago by running Mother through, but he's still got to contend with the son that grew up to be his greatest nemesis, Hunter Borgia, who we discover has roided himself up gene splicing with the Predators. Now, I won't say this boss fight is particularly good, as it's extremely easy to get absolutely obliterated out of nowhere, and the heat-seeking smart disk that he has is also really hard to dodge, so you have to just kind of get lucky with how dumb his AI can be and then stun lock him into oblivion, but it's at least a fun-looking set piece. And once we show the hunter who the real Predator is and remind him he's nothing without the mighty Yautja standing atop the giant Borgia statue, our honor reclaimed, we have paid our debt to our brothers in full with interest. Before the game ends, we see the fallout of Scarface's work as a buyout of Wayland by Yutani, who have managed to salvage the body of Lucretia and now are using her as the replacement for Isabella. And if I'm not mistaken, this means that she's going to be that Mother AI that we saw on the Nostromo in the original Alien movie. How cool is that? Concrete Jungle may just be the most impressive Predator-centric product ever made outside of the films, because it not only fulfills the franchise's most chaste power fantasy, but it delivers one of the best Predator stories, if not the best, ever told. The twists and turns are bold and totally redefine the franchise's lore in exciting ways. Now sure, Concrete Jungle can be pretty mindless and unfair at the worst of times with its bad camera, awkward controls, and lack of quick saving, but you get to do all the Predator stuff you could ever want to, like tearing through bad guys with classic weapons like the smart disc, wristblades, and plasmacaster, as well as sneaking up on folks while cloaked and punctuating their spine exiting their body with a throaty roar. Throw in optional side missions, challenge maps, and alternate costumes, as well as cool trophy rooms to view all of your kills and gear, and you've got a ton for fans to sink their mandibles into. And in a world of surprisingly few true Predator games, that's gotta count for something, warts and all.
Don't worry, asshole. You'll get another chance.
So, if you're enjoying the channel and really want to help it get to the next level, please consider becoming a patron or a channel member. By doing so, you'll be shouted out in the credits of every video, get early access to new videos, receive game keys as available, and even be able to vote on or contribute to upcoming projects. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, these people thought so, and I have to thank them for their generous support. Starting with Mark Neubauer, Deadforge, Hey Blondie, Yak Show, Bibby F. and Bloxburg, Melancholy Geek, and Luke Dudney. Thanks for signing on. I really appreciate it. And an extra special shout out to James Wyatt and the Nth Review for contributing to my highest tiers. And if you're not tired of me by now, go ahead and check me out in the Quad Damage podcast, where I'm joined by Deadforge and Robert Yap as we talk first-person games with developers, gaming personalities, and content creators alike. God bless you, everyone, and I'll see you soon.